Kako, Hawaiʻanae. My name is Kauko'ohu Kalani Wahilani, and you are watching the Waiʻanae Coast Candidate Forum 2018, and to my right is my partner.
Aloha, I'm Niniao Simmons, and I'm happy to be joining Kauko'ohu tonight. We'll be your moderators for tonight's panel, which will be asking questions of candidates for the state Senate race in District 21, our moku.
Yes, so we have, to my left, Diamond Garcia. In the middle, we have Maile Shimabukuro. And to my right, we have Tim Riley. Mahalo nui for taking your time out of your folks' busy schedule to come here. Thank you.
We'll begin with introductions. You'll each have 2 minutes to say something to our audience on TV. And then after that, we'll begin by asking questions, and each of you will have 1 minute per answer. So if we could start to my right, we'll start with you with your introduction.
2 minutes, Tim Riley. Just joking.
Aloha, my name is Tim Riley, and I'm from the Makaha Valley on the wonderful Waiʻanae coast. And I'll get the boring stuff out of the way. I did my bachelor's degree at Mercer University, I did my master's degree at Georgia State University, and I did my PhD work at Clark Atlanta University, where I was the first Caucasian graduate from Clark Atlanta University. It's a historically black college. And so it was quite an experience, and it was wonderful. I worked in the state of Georgia in the Department of Corrections as an offender rehabilitation counselor, and then I worked for the state of Georgia in the Department of Human Resources as a child therapist. And then I started my own private practice called Aloha Counseling Centers. Yes, that was on the continent, Aloha Counseling Centers, and we did alcohol and drug abuse therapy. And so that's a little bit about who I am. The reason I've chosen to run for state senate is because we have got to have proactive, strong representation from the Waiʻanae Coast, and I'm the person that can do that for you. So I humbly and deeply request your consideration for your vote come this August 11th. And I thank you so much, and it's been such an honor to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our current senator for District 21, Maile Shimabukuro.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Maile Shimabukuro, and I am the senator for the District 21, which is Ka'ena Point to Kalailoa. You know, I wanted to share with you that, you know, the #1 issue in this district is traffic. And so I've really made that a priority as senator. And 2 things that we're focusing on is widening Farrington Highway and creating a parallel route to get around Farrington Highway when Farrington's blocked up. So to widen Farrington Highway, I got the startup funds for the turn lane, which finally was open this past year. And so now we have a 1.2 mile 5th lane that goes down the middle of Nanakuli from Nanakuli Avenue to Haleakala Avenue. And then for the parallel route, a total of $13 million has been allocated that I made a priority. And the goal is to be able to get drivers from Pa'akea Road up above the homesteads and coming out either Makakilo or Piliokahi, Hiko, somewhere in that area. DHHL is working on the EIS for that parallel route now. And I do urge you to consider me for re-election. If I'm re-elected, I'll continue to make traffic our #1 priority. I want to further widen Farrington Highway and extend that 5th lane to Hakimo Road. DOT is conducting a study right now on that. And also want to extend the parallel route, continue to get funds for that. Mahalo nui loa for your support and your interest in our democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Diamond Garcia.
Aloha, I'm Diamond Garcia, and I'm running for the Hawaii State Senate, District 21, like she mentioned, from Ka'ena Point down to Kalailoa. I'm running because I'm a concerned resident. Born and raised on the Leeward Coast, born into a family in our own state housing programs, on food stamps, on welfare. I know the struggle of what it means to live in the typical West Side life. I understand, what it means to eat rice and shoyu for dinner because there's no food on the table, all right? But like I mentioned, I am a deeply concerned resident, and I just can't sit by and see homelessness increase by nearly 20% in just 1 year, like it has in this past year. I just can't sit by and watch our schools not properly funded and watch our schools crumble. I just can't sit by and watch our kids leave the Waiʻanae Coast and even leave Hawaii because the cost of living is outrageous. I just can't sit by and watch the same leadership continue to go down the same path to nowhere. So here I am rising up, wanting to be your next senator to represent the people in the Hawaii State Capitol, to give the voice to the people. I believe that it's time for real change on the Waiʻanae Coast. For far too long, career politicians have ruled Hawaii, have ruled this country, and even ruled this district. And I believe that people are frustrated, people are sick of it, and it's time for real change in Waiʻanae.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
I think we, as both of us live in, come from the west side, I wanted to continue the discussion that Senator Shimabukuro started in her introduction, which was the alternate bypass. Last year, my first grandson was born at Waiʻanae Comprehensive because we had traffic in the afternoon, and we didn't make it out from Waiʻanae, and we didn't try to attempt it because of the traffic heading eastbound, with the contraflow. So I wanted to hear from the candidates tonight. Besides the alternate bypass that being described by the senator, what other suggestions or solutions have you folks been considering to ease the traffic congestion and or to provide an alternative route into Waiʻanae? And we'll start with you, Mr. Garcia.
Traffic is something which we all face. And the reality is it's an everyday thing. We all face it every day. And we all don't like it. We're all sick of it. And so I believe that it's time for practical solutions. Of course, this recent thing which she did was great. It has alleviated the traffic flow. And of course, I believe that more needs to be done. But it all can't be done in just 1 month or 1 year, 4 years. It does take time. And I'm committed to researching, working with the DOT, and finding out possible solutions. Also, getting the voice from the community as to what they want to happen, because it's ultimately their home, not just ours, it's all of our home. And it's up to them, so we should sit down with them and find out what they want. Also, the whole access road issue, which we always talk about, needs to be discussed, I think, more thoroughly, because what's been proposed, I think, just won't help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Riley.
Traffic is abomination on the west side. It is absolutely horrible, and I'm so sorry that you had to have that experience with the birth. And I worry so constantly that this is occurring regularly. We as West Side residents have to plan our time to be gone by 2 and not plan to come home before 7. It's a major change in the way we live our life, and it's affecting our ability to have a good life. The alternate route system that has been thrown at us is just not the direct answer. We do have to go to our community and ask what they think we need done for this. And it has to be addressed. What we've done so far is throw a Band-Aid on a gushing wound, and it's not enough. And we've got to do something about it immediately.
Thank you. Senator.
Well, I think that these are interesting times, and the current administration in Washington has put millions and a lot of funds into the military, which some are happy about, some are not happy about. But I think what many of us are looking at is saying, well, if all this money is going to be going to the military, can there be some way that some of those funds can be funneled to help communities with transportation? Since the military occupies huge amounts of Hawaii, and including in Waiʻanae, major parts of Waiʻanae. And so I think it's time that we look at whether there is a possibility that the military could direct some of those funds to our transportation problem. They came out with a missile radar defense system presentation the other day. They're going to put it in space on Kaena Point and Alaska. And so they've got money to burn, it just seems like. And so I think that it's time to look at the feds and see if maybe they're there's some money now that's come up that the military can put towards transportation and helping us get a way out.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. My question would be to do with the military. So, is it time to review or adjust our dependence on the military here? Please explain, Senator.
Oh, yes. I mean, you know, so much of our resources and so much of our lands are occupied by the military. And I understand that they have an important mission, of course, you know, and critically, you know, needed to keep us safe and to protect, you know, others that are in harm's way. But you know, there's been a lot of good movements made in Waiʻanae. Malama Makua has made great strides. They're about to celebrate an anniversary of many years now on September 22nd of the end. You know, there hasn't been any kind of live fire training in Makua for, it's been a decade. They still haven't conducted the EIS that the lawsuit required. So it seems as if, you know, if they haven't done the EIS and they don't need it for live fire training, you know, maybe it is time to reconsider whether they actually, how much they need Makua. And so that's definitely something to look into, and I think that it is time to re-examine that question.
Mahalo. Mr. Riley.
Thank you so much for the question. I love the military. Don't get me wrong. I love the military. My father is a retired military officer when he was alive. My brother served in the Navy, and I love the military. But too much dependency in Hawaii on the military. In particular, out on the west side, we need that land brought back into the native population, and we need it done immediately. It can't be just left to be used at their discretion anytime they want. Our Aina must be protected, it shall be protected, and we're going to protect it. And it's time to gracefully ask the military to exit from that land. And we have to do it now. The time is right. No more excuses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracefully, I like that, gracefully. And to Diamond Garcia.
Yeah, you know, I first and foremost want to thank all those who have served our country and protected our shores, especially for those who have served from the Waiʻanae side. The military is an issue which constantly comes up at all the board meetings. All the residents are concerned, and so it is something which we really need to spend time looking into and to what the possible solutions could be. Talking about them leaving, would that be good or bad? Don't know. The fact is, there are lots of land owned by the military and the feds, which could be used by local residents for housing, for farming, which could grow our economy. So I would support them staying in Hawaii, protecting our shores, but kind of cut back and actually give some of the unused land to our residents so that our economy in Waiʻanae can actually thrive.
Mahalo.
Yeah, mahalo.
Thank you. Tita.
Following up on that question about the military, and I want to talk about Hawaiian homelands. The leeward coastline is home to the largest majority of Native Hawaiians in the state, and for Department of Hawaiian Homelands homesteads. As part of the Hawaiian Homelands Recovery Act, I believe the federal government still owes some lands to the department for lands that were illegally obtained without the Hawaiian Homes Commission approval. What would you do as senator to see that additional lands were made available and or services to the existing Native Hawaiian population along the leeward coastline? And we'll start with you, Mr. Riley.
The time has come to get that land back to the natives. No more excuses. I'm tired of the excuses. We can do it, and we can do it immediately. We need to work with our Washington representatives, as well as have the governor's office get involved, and we need to become the squeaky wheel. That land does not belong to anybody but the natives. Get it back to the natives, let them do with it what they need to do with it. They need to have their homes built, and we don't need to be going through all these lengthy process of getting the land distributed. Get it to the people that need it, and get it to the people that need it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator.
Great question. You know, you know, I definitely think that it's very important that we get more lands, especially on Oahu. And so definitely would reach out to our federal congressional delegation and everyone else that we can to try to obtain those lands, because at this point in time we have thousands on the wait list. The first priority for everyone, most everyone on the wait list, is Oahu. The only land we have left on Oahu is Kapolei, Voice of America, and Lyman Ranch and Nanakuli Ranch, all on the leeward side. And so the lands are quickly disappearing, quickly being taken up. And so we definitely need to add more, because what we have left is not enough to satisfy the demand of who's on the wait list. So I think there's a clear indication. And so definitely work with the feds, and if we have to do land exchanges maybe, so we can open up more lands on Oahu for the high demand of those on the wait list, that might be looked into as well.
Thanks, Senator.
Mr. Garcia.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, more lands need to be appropriated for Hawaiian homelands. Our residents need homes, they need housing, they need shelters, and homelessness is not just a crisis anymore. It's become an epidemic. And like I mentioned earlier, in just 1 year, it's increased by nearly 20%. It's absolutely outrageous. And who suffers? Our people. So regarding Hawaiian homelands and DHHL, I think before we go off and venture on and how we can create more homes here and there, we should take care of those who are already, residents in Hawaiian homelands. I mean, there's been deaths in Nanakuli Homestead recently. I mean, because there's not proper infrastructure, sidewalks, not proper signage for schools in the area. And so we should actually, hold more meetings. I mean, when was the last time we actually held, Senate town halls and actually talked to our residents, what you guys need? And have their voices heard, because ultimately that's their home. And so we should spend more time empowering the people and having them tell us what they want, because we are elected by them and we are to represent them.
Mahalo. So we have little under 20 minutes. This next question I'd like to ask you folks is coming from an OPO perspective. It's actually coming from my niece Meliana. So as Senator, how would you help more funding for Hawaiian charter schools? Starting with you, Mr. Riley.
I am a strong believer in education. Anything that can be done for education needs to be done. One way we can do it, and this is going to scare people, is to bring the lottery to Hawaii. Let's do it. Let's earmark some of that money for education, part of it charter schools, public schools, and let's give some to homeschooling. Let's take care of everybody. Education has to be one of the primary jobs that this state takes, because if we don't take care of it now, having worked in the Department of Corrections, you pay them now or you're gonna pay them later. So let's take care of our keiki now, get them the education they need to be able to survive and thrive. Thank you.
Diamond?
Yeah, schooling and education is something that's personal to me. Being raised out there, 5 siblings, many of them didn't even, pass high school, dropped out. But I told myself, you know what? I don't want to settle for the typical life on the West Side. I want to thrive. I mean, I want that great chances to do things in life. And so I worked hard, knocked on doors, sold books, and put myself through private school because I wanted education. I'm a strong believer in educational choice. We need more programs. We need more Hawaiian immersion schools on the West Side, more charter schools. And you know what? It has not been properly funded. Public schools get $12,000 per pupil, charter schools $7,000 per pupil. No money for food, no money for special ed programs. It's ridiculous. And people are just frustrated and sick of the public school systems. Common Core has destroyed Hawaii. I oppose Common Core and support choice in education.
Thank you. And last but not least, Senator.
Well, on November 6th, you're all going to have the chance to vote on a historic constitutional amendment that the HSTA pushed this year in the legislature. And this would create funding for the education system in general, which includes charter schools, and it would create a huge change. And what this constitutional amendment does is it allows the state to consider taxing investment properties. And that's all it's saying. You know, if you vote yes on this constitutional amendment, you're not saying yes that it's going to happen. You're saying yes, the legislature can then debate it and consider passing a bill next session. And the HSTA is careful in that they don't want to hurt, the average families. They want to look at the wealthy and those that can afford a mansion or a beachfront, a vacation rental type home. And so we're going to debate. I mean, if it passes, we'll be able to debate that. And walk-in voting is going to happen this year. It's going to come into effect. So, this is a very important question. Yeah, and if we don't get it passed this year, it might be our last chance to get funding for education.
Thank you. And then the last question to cackle that question from my niece Meliana would, as senator, how would you incorporate Hawaiian educational traditions in the DOA system on the leeward side? Mr. Riley.
We have got to begin putting the native traditions as part of everyday school curriculum. It has to be done. It's what makes these islands great. It's what makes this place a place where you want to come and feel the spirituality. You want to feel the aina. You want to feel in touch with everything. So we've got to make that a part of our regular, everyday curriculum in every school in this state. It has to be done. It's one of the things that will bring pride into the keiki. It will teach them the tradition of where they came from, how great their ancestors are. And that's something that has to be done, and it has to be done immediately.
Mahalo. Diamond?
Well, as your next senator, I'm committed to the growth and actually having a K through 12 Hawaiian immersion school on the Waiʻanae coast. In fact, many of our residents, just regarding this whole, those who speak Hawaiian, Ōlelo Hawaii, many of us on the Waiʻanae coast do and would love to learn. I believe that, there's lots of kids who actually have to wake up 4 in the morning, catch a bus to go far away for, because they believe and care in their culture. Waiʻanae is a place where our culture is to thrive more and more, and I will support having a K through 12 school, Hawaiian immersion school on the Waiʻanae coast, and working with all the principals in, like you mentioned, incorporating more and more Hawaiian studies in public school and charter school programs.
Mahalo. And last but not least, Senator Shimabukuro.
Well, there's a wonderful movement already afoot on the Waiʻanae coast looking at a P through 20 immersion program. My nephew is part of that. He goes to Maili Kukahi School, and he's going to be in third grade next year, I believe. And so what's really exciting is that Punana formed a partnership with Navahi Charter School on Hawaii Island to make this happen, but now they need more space because they want to, each year as these kids get older, make sure they can continue.
Yes.
And so I'm definitely committed to seeing if they can find some kind of space, maybe the KS Center, because KS is going to expand at their spot in Maili. We also passed a bill this session that says that public schools need to do an accounting. If they have space that's not being used, they need to then notify the Charter School Commission. And I know that there's some schools, Nanakuli L is one that at one point in time was not at full capacity. And so maybe that could be a home for Maili Kukahi to expand. But definitely I'm committed to making that happen and hoping that my nephew can continue on his way.
Yeah, awesome.
Mahalo. Mahalo, folks. Tita?
Okay. I think some of you might have heard a couple weeks ago there was talk about the county shipping the homeless from downtown in Waikiki to the west side with a one-way bus ticket. As the senator for Waiʻanae and the Leeward Coast, how would you support or oppose such a policy decision? And I'll start with you, Senator.
Oh, I mean that. Talk about an injustice. I think, the Waiʻanae Coast has done its share. I mean, we have, we have very big hearts and so much aloha, which is great. But I think we're at capacity at this point, and I think that, we need to put our efforts to make sure that there are shelters in place for, those that are houseless around the state, and not have to put them in any one community in particular. And so the legislature did do a huge effort this year, and we passed an Ohana Zones bill. We passed a historic funding bill that has, I think it was $300 million to create affordable housing. And so we definitely, are making strides and very strong efforts to make sure that there's transitional shelters throughout the state and not all concentrated on the Waiʻanae Coast. And I definitely want to support that happening. I would be against that policy.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia?
She mentioned that homelessness is at capacity. We are beyond capacity. It is absolutely outrageous. I mean, you turn left, right, up, and down, they're everywhere. And now some of them actually do want help and are willing to be helped. Some of them are not. Some of them are just chronics. So how do we, address this issue? I mean, this issue has been talked about at every single debate forum for the past 15, 20, 30 years in Waiʻanae. When will it actually be addressed? When will this senator in our district actually stand up to the state capitol, to the county, say enough is enough? Don't ship them out here. It's ridiculous. But once again, it's ruled by a one-party system. And they're all, friends, and they all work together. It's time for someone to stand up and say, you know what? This is not right. It's just not right. We have to stand up for our people. And the homelessness should not be coming out to the Waiʻanae Coast. I mean, we are beyond capacity, absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Riley?
Whether the state mandates sending them out to the west side or not, it's going to happen. We cleaned out under the Nimitz area, and our homeless, houseless population exploded. So this is something that we're very familiar with out on the west side. I would love to see that houseless issue resolved. One way we can do so is begin to reuse, repurpose items that we can get from local organizations. I've already discussed the lottery once. We can earmark part of that to purchase land and build houseless communities and access. One thing Hawaii does great is recycle. We take pallets, we can make pallet homes, we can, when people are redoing their houses, we can get them to donate their sinks. Churches will pitch in. We can beat this issue, and we can do it on the west side with grace and decorum and make everyone feel welcome. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Okay, how is everybody doing? Okay, so I asked this question to our panel earlier, and this is for teachers. So as a senator, would you implement legislation for pay wages for our teachers so that they stay in Hawaii, especially on the Waiʻanae Coast, and that their wages would be comparable or even better than their counterparts on the U.S. continent? So starting with Mr. Riley.
The time has come to begin to pay our teachers like rock stars and pro athletes. We are entrusting the most important resource of our life, our keiki, with these individuals. And we need to make sure that we're retaining these educators. And the best way to do that is to make them feel appreciated, cared for, and respected. And one way to do that is by financial remuneration, making sure that they're paid what they're due. Let's not make them have to come out of their own pockets to buy things for their classrooms. We can do it, and we have to stand up. As your senator, I will stand up and demand that they get what they need to make sure our keiki have what they need in those classrooms. Let's get them some air conditioning too, so that they can learn in a safe, comfortable environment.
Thank you. Senator?
Okay, well, good. I'm glad this gives me more time to talk about the constitutional amendment that the Hawaii State Teachers Association is supporting. And the reason that they're pushing for this amendment is to create these wages that are actually what they're due. Hawaii has one of the lowest property taxes in the entire nation. And in other states, property tax is what funds education. Education is tied directly in with the county, and then their property tax goes directly to the schools. And that's why the HSTA said there's actually quite a clear nexus and an example of how this is done in other states. And so really, Hawaii has in a lot of ways become an investor's market. People around the world know, hey, Hawaii, there's such low property tax. Let's go buy our mansions there and spend our millions there, and then it drives up the property values for everybody else and our taxes. So, I really urge you to support this constitutional amendment when you get to the ballot on November 6th. This is really a serious way that we can finally give our teachers the pay that they deserve.
Thank you. And last but not least, Diamond Garcia.
I don't think taxing people more money will actually help the situation. I mean, people are, the cost of living is already outrageous. I oppose all tax increases and support all tax decreases. So how do you help the problem? How do you hire more teachers? Right now in Hawaii, there is a teacher shortage. We just don't have enough teachers. So what should we do? Well, there are those who are already working at schools, teacher assistants, who may not have the proper qualifications, but you know what? They've been there for the past 20 years, 15, 20, 30 years. They know the school, they know the students, they know the families. Hire them as teachers, use them. It will help the schools, it will help the kids, it will help them. And of course, our teachers need to be paid properly. I do support redirecting funds and not paying stupid projects, which the state does constantly, and actually put money where money should go.
Thank you. Part of the HUD report that came out last month had the low income at 93,400 for a family of four for Honolulu County. Thinking about the entirety of the Waiʻanae coastline, what kind of economic drivers would you as a state senator bring in to try and uplift the economy right now?
Okay.
Mr. Riley.
93 grand, oh my God, that's crazy. But the bottom line is we can supplement that immediately, and we have the ability to do that on the beautiful Waiʻanae coast. Let's do it by legalizing cannabis and bringing in the lottery. The cannabis industry, hemp industry, oh my gosh, we can make anything out of hemp. We can build homes out of hemp. There's an answer to your houseless issue right there, making it more affordable. So we'll do that, and we'll do that immediately. That will be one of the first things that I will be pushing as your new state senator. Another thing is the lottery brings in much, much, much revenue that we don't have to worry about raising taxes. I don't want to raise taxes. That's ridiculous. So let's access the funds that we can get, and let's be creative about it. Legalizing hemp, cannabis, bring in the lottery, let's make some money here.
Thank you.
Mr. Garcia.
The economy really is what drives the state, what drives our country, what drives our coast on Waiʻanae. And the sad reality is for the past 10, 15, 20, 30 years, our economy has dwindled. It really has, and I support local businesses. I support local farmers. But the sad reality is having a business in Hawaii is crazy because they're taxed way out of proportion. And all the Democrats do is vote yes on every single tax increase. And our local businesses, I mean, just this morning, I had breakfast at the Lighter Side at the Countryside Cafe. Talked to the owners. Taxes is ridiculous. It's hard to survive on the Waiʻanae coast. We should cut taxes for local businesses because then they can hire more people, create more jobs, and the economy can grow that way. Also our farmers need help. Waiʻanae used to be a place where we actually grew food. We had lots of cattle, lots of pig farms, lots of produce. Nowadays, you hardly ever see it. We need to address the agriculture issue.
Okay.
Senator.
Well, I was a strong supporter, and I'll continue to be, of bills like what we passed this year, which, like I mentioned, was about $300 million or more in funding, and these funds went to the Dwelling Unit Revolving Fund, Rental Housing Trust Fund, Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, and several other incentives that are out there to encourage developers to make these kinds of affordable housing projects. And what we're seeing in Waiʻanae is that these projects are starting to come our way. We have a great project Kali Watson is about to do groundbreaking on, Hale Makana o Maili. That's affordable housing. And then Shaw is also doing an affordable housing project in Maili. I just talked to RJ, who does green homes, and he's going to make affordable homes that have the Tesla batteries in them in Makaha, I believe. So if we create these kind of incentives, there actually are developers out there who are willing to take advantage of them. We have the great example too of the Hawaii Vista that's behind City Mill in Waiʻanae. That was using these kind of state-offered affordable housing credits and types of funds. So I'll continue to support that.
Thank you. All right. How are we doing on time? Good. All right.
I wanted to follow up and ask about the old Makaha Resort in Makaha.
Yes.
As state senator, what thoughts or suggestions or ideas would you have to either repurpose or perhaps make use of that poor structure that's fading quickly? Mr. Garcia.
Well, the fact is, Waiʻanae is a beautiful place, and lots of tourists are afraid to come down because of our reputation. They're afraid to get beaten up or their car stolen, right? But once they're out here, they're like, wow, how beautiful this place is. Having a resort would grow our economy exponentially. It really would. It would provide jobs, revenue for our local people, and that's exactly what we need. But under the current leadership, this one-party rule that's ruled Waiʻanae for the past 15, 20, 30 years, is the reason why resorts such as that close down. They can't survive. And that's why Hawaii is in its current state.
Mr. Riley.
I kind of miss the old Makaha Resort. That was the very first place that I ever came decades ago. And anytime I came here from the continent was to that resort. I miss it. It's what helped me fall in love with the Makaha Valley, and that's why I make that my permanent home, is because of the joy that I felt, the spirituality that I felt of that valley, the connection with the Aina. And that land is very special to me, and I feel that it's very sacred to me, and we need to respect it as such. I'd like to see us convert that into something with truly affordable housing, and I'm not talking the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 homes. I'm talking about things that people like Twinkle and her people can get into. That's a prime space for it, and I welcome them into my community.
Thank you. Senator.
Well, Pacific Links is in the process of redeveloping both the resort and the golf course. I just had a conversation with Mike Akane, who doesn't, he's still involved with them. He's working for Hawaii Community Foundation now, but still heavily involved with Pacific Links. And he assured me that at this time, their plans are in place and they're still going to go forward with all that they briefed the community on. And they're confident that investors will come because there are only 4 designated areas for resort development on Oahu: Waikiki, Ko'olina, Turtle Bay, and Makaha. And so they're quite confident, being that the last 2 areas on Ko'olina have now been bought by Atlantis Resort, by the Chinese. And so now that those 2 spots have been taken, they're quite confident that now what's left is Makaha. And so now they're just waiting for investors. They said it will happen, it's a matter of time. And so we should be seeing those jobs come back again. My cousin was the head of housekeeping at the old Makaha Resort, so definitely support getting those jobs back.
Great.
Mahalo. So we have like a little over 5 minutes left. So my last question I want to ask you folks, as you know, senators to be or returning senator on the Waiʻanae Coast, for one thing, myself being Aloha Aina, seeing just the disregard of illegal dumping that has been, you know, rampant on the Waiʻanae Coast, as well as, you know, Haleiwa or even that Hauula and what's. You know, I know that Cedric Gates had implemented, you know, that policy that is Maikai. But for me, I think we should have stiffer laws for if, you know, for someone getting caught. I mean, that the laws may be really stiff so that, you know, they think twice about, you know, there's just total disregard for the Aina, and it's running rampant. So as senator, what would you do to help with this disease that we got, illegal dumping on the Waiʻanae Coast? Diamond?
I agree. We need stiffer laws for those who dump illegally. Trash is just, I mean, wherever you go in Waiʻanae, it's horrendous. I mean, and I do want to applaud Representative Tupola for the work that she's done in the past 4 years as representative in the 43rd District. All the cleanups, hauling on all those cars. I mean, just next week, you know, we'll be doing a cleanup as well. And we need to actually inform our community as to what's going on and involve them. Let's clean our Aina up. This is our home. Let's clean it up. But I really like that. We need to pass stricter laws, stiff laws, for those who are caught dumping illegally on our land.
Mahalo. Senator?
Definitely an issue close to my heart, and Sherry Kajiwara, who's the head of the City Department of Customer Services, said that, that this current penalties for illegally abandoning your car could be raised. And so I definitely think we should look at raising those fines, making them something that actually stings and actually they actually feel as if it's going to affect them. Mm-hmm. Another suggestion that she had that I want to look into next year is the issue of phantom vehicles, because what happens is people will sell their car, and then the previous owner turns in their paper, but the new person doesn't turn in their part of the paperwork. Mm. And so then when the car gets abandoned or it's left, HPD doesn't know who owns it. And so she set a requirement that says maybe when you sell a car, you turn the license plate into the DMV, one of the license plates in. And then when the buyer has to come into DMV and make sure they do their end of the paperwork to get the other license plate. Definitely one way. Mm. So definitely want to explore more areas, and I'm very excited about the bill. I did the companion to that abandoned vehicle bill, by the way, which 10 days to remove, very exciting.
Great.
Thank you. Got 3 minutes left. Mr. Riley, you have 1 minute to answer that question, please.
Thank you. We have got to start by immediately funding our police department. We need more police presence out on the Waiʻanae coast. The abandoned vehicles, not enough done. I'm sorry, they're still piling up. They're still all over the place. We can do that by getting more police presence and being able to catch the people in the act. And the only way you're going to do that is if you have officers available instead of having to run up and down the Waiʻanae coast and all out to Kapolei. We have got to have them on site. And that's the very first immediate thing we can do. And so we do that, and we will begin to see the rubbish issue decrease rapidly. It's something that has to be dealt with now, and I appreciate your asking that question.
Great.
Thank you. So we got a minute and a half left, so 20 seconds, plug while you're running for Senator. Diamond Garcia.
Well, the fact is, for the past 7 years, our current leadership has not done enough, in my opinion, to help the people of the Waiʻanae Coast. I talked to hundreds of people, walk the district. People are frustrated. It's time for change. It's time for real change. Vote the same way, you'll get the same results. Vote for change, change will come.
Thank you. Senator.
I want to emphasize that, my opponent says that I would not support lowering taxes. Actually, I've sponsored the Senate version of the state EITC bill, which passed and provides tax relief for low-income wage earners. Also championed the bill to allow DOE schools, public schools, to engage in commercial enterprise. And it came out of Waiʻanae High School. It will create more funds for education.
Thank you. Last but not least, Mr. Riley.
Ahui ho kako. I want to make sure that everybody understands that together we can make a difference. I believe in living pono, protecting the aina, and providing for our keiki and our kopuna. And that's something that we have to do, and we can do that starting right now. Thank you. Much aloha.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the volunteers, Kauka Ohu and myself, Niniao Simmons, we just want to express our gratitude for each of you to coming in to spend your time with us for tonight's episode of Waiʻanae Coast Candidate Forum 2018. Tomorrow we'll be back on at 4 o'clock. We'll be doing the OHA races, 4, 5, and 6 p.m. and then our state representative, District 43 and District 44 later in the evening. So again, I just want to thank all of you. Thank you for my wonderful partner tonight.
You too.
We've been doing this candidate forum since 2012, and it's because of people like you who take the time to run for office and to try and make a change and make use of the democratic process, that it's the people's government. So
That's right.
I want to offer a mahalo.
And go out and vote and get
Yes.
Registered
Get
August
registered.
11th,
Yes.
primary
Walk-in
election
voting
in Hawaii.
will be
That's
okay
right.
this year.
So that being said, ahui ho kako, pakaya Paul, aloha ki kai. Aloha.
Aloha.
Well, it's been quite an evening with the panels that we have presented. I want to thank all of you who have joined us over the last few hours to take a look at these other candidates where normally we don't get an opportunity to hear them because they just happen not to be close enough to the microphone or the television cameras. And this was at least one of our purposes, to bring those other voices to the people so that they could see many of our other candidates and the valuable ideas that they have. We are not saying that we support or we are against any other ideas, but it's important that we present them. And not only for them do we thank, but there's many others that we thank. First of all, you for putting this program together, and there are others who have supported you in the community. You want to mention some of those people who
Yes,
should
thank
be
you so much,
mentioned?
Poka. You know, we really want to thank not only the individuals that you have seen in front of the camera, but the many ones of us that are behind the camera. And I'd just like to start off with thanking our Ōlelo production crew. This is their 4th biennial year that they have supported the Waiʻanae Coast Candidate Forum. Our forum's purpose is to present those folks that are less likely to be invited or to seen in many places. But our supporters have been the Waiʻanae Hawaiian Civic Club, the Lua Lua Lei, and the Makaha Hawaiian Civic Clubs as well. We also want to thank our Liliuokalani Trust, who has been renamed from Queen Liliuokalani Children's Center. They are now known as the Liliuokalani Trust. Also the Hawaiian Affairs Committees of both the Waiʻanae Coast Neighborhood Board and the Nanakuli Ma'ili Neighborhood Board. And we'd like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Herbert and Hewlin from the Waiʻanae Kai Hawaiian Homestead, our Princess Kahanu Estates Homestead, and our Nanakuli Homestead, and also our Waiʻanae Valley Homestead Community Association. So, and all of our volunteers, many of which you don't see, but they will be on the credits. So please, when you see them, acknowledge them as well.
Well, and tomorrow we're having another set of programs, and tomorrow we'll be interviewing who?
Tomorrow we have 3 panels for Office of Hawaiian Affairs. We have one panel that's going to have a combination of both Oahu and Maui candidates. So even though the 2 Maui candidates will automatically go to the general election, we did invite them, and one did accept. So he will be joining 3 Oahu candidates on his panel. Then we have 2 other panels that have the at-large, and one Oahu candidate on one of those as well.
These are all OHA trustees.
Those are the candidates running for OHA trustees.
So
yes.
even if they're running on the Maui seat, they are
Right.
still voted by everyone.
By everybody.
And I think we should point out that it's not only Native Hawaiians who will be voting in that particular election, but anyone can vote
Everyone can vote.
unless you're not a U.S. citizen. And that we need to change. I've
Right.
asserted that earlier. And they're icing us out, those
Right.
of us who say that we cannot accept American citizenship because we are loyal to being Hawaiian nationals, and yet we cannot even vote in the OHA election.
Exactly. So there are many of us that are Hawaiian nationals, and we exist in this world where America has occupied us for far too long.
And we have been marginalized from full participation. You and
Yes.
I, if we take that position, we cannot vote in even the OHA election or stand to be elected for any of these positions. So we are iced out automatically.
Right.
They call it marginalization,
Marginalized.
or the very people who should be included. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, for being so much in front of us. Mahalo to all of you folks as well. Aloha.